Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for Tuesday, October 29th, 2019. Let's do a roll call.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Trustee Calvert. Here. Trustee Caudill. Here. President Simon Holland.
Here.
Trustee Kelly, we're getting on the phone, hopefully soon. Trustee Minetto. Here. Vice President Raymond. Here. Clerk Taylor, I am here. And Student Trustee Nathan Noble. Here. All right. Awesome, Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would like to ask that we have a moment of silence for the Worcester High School student that lost her life this morning in a tragic accident, and just call on the public and all of our community to be mindful of the safety of our students. We have had too many accidents this year, and we all need to redouble our efforts to remember these precious lives that we are all entrusted with. If we could take a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Student Trustee Noble, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Thank you, Nathan. Okay, our next item is action to adopt the agenda, and we are asking that item 4.06, which was presentation of the strategic technology plan, be pulled from this agenda, and that item will return for discussion possible action at a future meeting of the Board of Trustees. So we would take a motion to approve the agenda with item 4.06 being pulled. Thank you, Trustee Taylor. Second by Trustee Minetto. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We will go on to the consent agenda items, and those are items 2.01 through 2.13, and I would like to call for any public comment there may be.
Tony Marcigo.
Welcome, Tony.
I am Tony Moresco. I am on the WESP, Washoe Education Support Professionals Board. I am also their chief negotiator. Thank you very much for considering our contract, and I hope you approve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there other public comment?
Connie Thompson.
Ms. Thompson, welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to speak on the contract as well. I have many friends and family who are part of this union organization, and while I know that you all appreciate their hard work every day, it doesn't seem to translate into actual dollars, and many of your people qualify for food stamps. So I think that's real disappointing, especially to somebody like me who worked hard to get the marijuana money years ago for the schools, and hoping that it would translate into actual living wage jobs and having our education taken care of. But my biggest complaint about, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, but I was told this union was given to the body of the union members on a Friday morning. They only had one business day to review it, and a Saturday. So if anybody was out sick, on vacation, or just didn't have time to check their email, they had no input into this. And I think this sets a really bad example and makes you a little curious of why that was. Anything like this should go over a week so that everyone has a chance to look at it. So I just wanted to voice my concerns on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
That's all I have.
Okay. Do you want to say anything about, or did Virginia?
Virginia, do you want to respond to that timing issue? Pardon? Would you like to respond to that timing issue? Would you like me to? Sure.
Thank you, boss. Virginia Duran, Director of Labor Relations and Chief Negotiator for the district with the West unit. Actually, we don't have any control as a district as to how the organization sets forth their ratification. That's their rules with regard to distributing it to their members and setting a time frame. So it's not anything that we have control over. It's the association has control over how they ratify. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Okay, we'll consider a motion to approve the consent agenda. Okay, motion by Dr. Taylor. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Caudill. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that will take us to item number 3, which is general public comment. Do we have general public comment, Ms. Batchelder?
John Eppolito.
Mr. Eppolito, welcome.
Thank you. John Eppolito, President of Protect Nevada Children. I have 2 kids left in the district, not 3, and I'm a former K-12 teacher. You can find Protect Nevada Children on Facebook at Protect Nevada Children. 2 weeks ago, we entered a request for information, a FOIA request. We asked 5 questions. One of them was answered, but it wasn't the question we asked. And the other 4, here was the answer to the other 4. Nevada law does not require the district to answer questions as part of a public records request response. Here are our questions that you guys don't want to answer. You might not have to answer them, but for the future of these kids, you should. One of the questions, which of these vendors does have a contract with the school district? And we're talking about the school officials and the approved vendors. You guys won't answer that. Second question that you won't answer, exactly what data and or student information is being shared with each of these approximately 250 vendors? You won't answer that for some reason. Next question, which of these vendors are creating profiles on our children? You don't have to answer that, and you won't. For the future of these kids, you should answer it, and you should all be concerned about that. This question, is Class Dojo the only vendor creating psychological profiles on our children? You don't have to answer that, and you won't answer it, and it's very disturbing. It's very frustrating to me as a parent. My kids can't get through high school without spending hours a day on the computer, and I think it's ridiculous. Their total geometry class, the whole class is online now. I'm a math teacher. I would never even have thought of doing something like that. It's crazy. Why do we need the teacher? Why don't we just give the kids the computer? Their biology class, probably half of the class is online. And when Incline went to one-to-one school, the first high school in the district, I was promised that my kids wouldn't have to do that. Well, you know what? That was a lie. One of you was here when that happened. And it's very frustrating. New York Times summed it up pretty good in December 2008. Kids shouldn't have to give up their privacy for an education. In Washoe County and many other districts, that's exactly what's happening. Our bill, SB 403, would have prevented this, at least would have allowed parents to opt out of kids sharing personal data, information, and schoolwork with third-party vendors. Parents should be able to opt out. We should not be forced into this against our will just to get an education. We just had another parent in Incline in high school that had to pull their kid out of school because of what he was accessing on this school computer. There's lots more to that. And I had another question that still hasn't been answered. If a vendor is not on the school official or approved vendors list like Naviance, because now Incline High School might buy Naviance, some of us don't want it, are they allowed to use Naviance if it's not on the list? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eppolito.
Seth Sengi.
Welcome, Seth.
Hi, My name is Seth, and today I came here to talk about a rather sensitive subject, but something that I feel that really does matter, especially in high school cases. I feel like it is not right that a victim of an assault should be forced to attend school and be in the same building with their assaulter. I feel as if I feel that still, regardless of if the convicted does have a right to an education, that they should not be able to attend the same school. It is very hard and very frustrating for victims of assaults to focus on schoolwork and feel like they are in a safe environment when their attacker is still around them and in the same building. I and many others have had to go through this with the school only accommodating to maybe escorting the victim from class to class, but nothing else is done and anything could happen, regardless of if there's police on campus or not. Many things can happen, and it's very traumatizing. I feel like something should be done about this, and until then, it's very difficult for victims to even get by or just even think day to day, and a lot of them tend to drop out of school because of these reasons. I feel like it's very concerning and something should be done because there are a shocking amount of victims that do go around school and they're forced to go to class with their assaulter, to see them in the hallway, to see them at lunch, and it's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. And we may have some comment on that from trustees when we get to request for future agenda items at the end of the meeting. Okay, any other public comment? All right, thank you, JJ. We will go on then to items under number 4, and something positive that we can talk about is the new Washoe County School District mobile communication application. Megan and Irene Payne and Charles.
Good afternoon, President Simon Holland, trustees, Interim Superintendent McNeil. For the record, Irene Payne, Chief Communications and Community Engagement Officer for the school district. I'm joined with me this afternoon by, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'm Communications Manager Megan Downs.
And Charles?
Charles Rons, Social Media Specialist, Communications Department.
So it is something really quite exciting that we have to share with you. It's a project that we've been working on for some time, and really when I say we, I should really say Megan and really Charles. It's something Charles has been working on for such a long time. And what we're presenting to you this afternoon is the very start of a mobile application for the school district. It's a mobile app that will provide us with an additional platform to share relevant news, interesting information, updates, weather updates with our family, staff, and with our general community. It's an app just like all the apps you have on your devices at the moment. So it's free. It can be downloaded, like I say, just like any other app. And one thing to point out about it is that there's no logon to the information, to the app, so no personal data, no personal information is being collected. It's all push information, kind of feed, or feed information. And what we're going to share with you is really phase 1. So what we decided is that we would walk before we could run. So we are going to share with you just the first phase. There will be a second phase, and when we've actually figured out what works and what doesn't work, what's needed and what isn't needed, then we'll actually add more content to the app. So this is phase one, which we will launch before the end of the year when we've done some beta testing. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Megan and to Charles to actually give you way more information and really exciting stuff.
Great. So just a little bit of background. This app is just another tool or extension of the mass communication system that we have existing for families. So that's through our vendor Blackboard, and that's how we're able to provide our direct emails, phone calls, and texts to families. So this will just be one more way to get that information to them. We also use Blackboard for our web content management services, SchoolWires. So this application has content that it's automatically pulled from our website, as Irene was saying, as well as school websites and social media feeds, both from the district and school social accounts. So the advantage is no additional training for staff will be required. It's just going to be pulled in from the work that we're already doing. So communications and IT staff will continue to support schools on matters of outreach and web content management, and we'll also continue to fulfill our responsibilities and commitments of non-discrimination, ADA compliance, web accessibility. So we have a communications plan in progress. You've been seeing some of the ads that are going to be going out over our existing channels. We'll be sharing that on social media or our website. And be able to show the updates, kind of build community excitement. That's what we're going for. So Irene talked about we'll be in sort of a soft launch phase and then launch to the public before the end of the year. So Charles gets the exciting part. He's going to show you how it actually works. So.
All right, bear with me real quick while I pull up my phone screen. And
So Charles is actually working off his phone at the moment, off his mobile phone, cell phone.
now what you're seeing here is actually, I'm going to click on the lower right-hand corner app, and this is a preview version. This will have district branding when it goes live in the store. So before I get into much of what you're looking at, I will say that when you first launch the app, you do need to select which schools you're interested in keeping up to date with, and you will be receiving information that's published to their calendars, their social media feeds, and throughout their website. I live in the Worcester High School, Libby Booth, and Vaughan zone, so I've actually set this up to mimic my neighborhood. So the first thing you're going to see are some top stories scrolling around the top. These are being pulled in from a few things. So this is actually a news release we put out yesterday about 2 teachers who have won an award for just being awesome. And we can jump in here and read all about their accomplishments. Scrolling through some of these options, we're seeing some Worcester football highlights that they shared on Twitter, some more Twitter excellence from sports. Here is a promotion that they're doing about a university that's providing information to students this week. My feed is really Worcester heavy today because they just have a ton going on and their calendar is very packed. So heading back to the front page of the application, I'm going to click on my news feed, which is going to give us a little more in-depth look at some of the schools I'm subscribed to. Oh, I'm also subscribed to AACT in this case. So there's a ton of stuff going on at Worcester today, so they're the first thing to pop up. We're seeing some Twitter information coming through. We have some AACT wants us to know about the blood drive coming through. School district news coming through again. So information that's just being published on existing school websites so that staff do not need to be receiving additional training to be able to publish information to this application at this phase. The next option is going to be Infinite Campus, which just takes us to the Infinite Campus portal. Just makes it easy to find and track down and get in there. And you can view all of your Infinite Campus information in real time. I don't actually have any students of my own, so I can't log into that for you today. Notifications is currently not showing anything, but this is where the school district's actually going to be able to send push notifications to you. So anticipate if school is delayed for snow, you're going to be receiving updated information through the application of that, in addition to all the other tools that we continue to use.
Charles, just a question there. So if I sign up for 3 schools, I'll still get all of the district-wide information too. Okay.
Yes. If you would like, you could even configure it to leave the school district information out, but we don't think people are likely to do that. And you will be, by default, subscribed to school district info.
Okay.
So we have school district directory. We also have...
we have another question. Trustee Caudill?
Yeah, that's something I just thought about. I know that there's been some community members who have expressed to me that they just don't really know who their trustee is. They don't know who actually represents them. They have to go search it. And if they essentially follow a school, is there any way to pair the two trustees at that school, the district that school sits in, so that they know who represents them?
I'm really glad you asked that question, and I'm a little bit bummed that I didn't get it done in time to show you guys today. I was working on a look up and contact your trustees section, and it was just a little bit too buggy for me to demo for you today. There's just some little errors in the code, but yeah, we want to make it effectively. We would just list schools, and you could kind of see what trustee is representing your schools. We think that would be the easy way to look it up, and then you can immediately reach out to you guys via email, which is our primary method of doing that. Yeah, I was really bummed. It was just so close, but I couldn't quite pull it off today. That is a feature that we will launch with. Just wasn't ready. And then get back in here. So the calendar kind of displays district calendars. So as you see here, it actually is showing events from my schools and from the district. So I'm going to just check out this one, and I'm going to add it to my phone calendar real quick. And now I can get notifications about that on all my devices that are set up through my phone. Just a quick way to take these events and be able to share them quickly. So Photos is going to be displaying just some of the big information that we're pushing on the front of our website. So information on the pathway to positive progress, information about Niche, congratulations to Hunter Lake. This is the kind of stuff that you'll see in big images when you first log on to washouschools.net. Which one thing I really love about that feature is it does automatically pull from the website, which gives me the ability to publish in more places without adding to the amount of work and code I have to write, which is always nice. Right now, athletics is set up to show me what's going on at Worcester. It just goes to their athletics page, which Worcester does an excellent job of maintaining. The superintendent is going to give us a little bio of Kristen, and it will also have contact information provided in there as well really soon. Settings is where you actually set up what schools you're going to follow. So just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and follow Galena too while we're at it, because you know, they've got a really excellent CTE program, and I'm thinking about enrolling my student there, and I might just want to see what's going on at that school. Additionally, we have links to My School Bucks, so you can get in here and deal with your all of our nutrition services information, and Safe Voice. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail as to what Safe Voice is, but pops you right in here, and you are ready to make reports if this is something you need. And then we also have bus schedules, and you can click on here and enter your house and street number and get into there right away. As Irene said, this is just the first phase. These are the functions that we felt we could bring with a high level of fidelity now. And we have a lot of features. There's a lot of capability behind this software that, you know, it's going to take time for us to build up to, and some excellent features in the distant future might also require additional training of our staff. And that's just something that we're going to kind of build on as we're sure we can do it well.
Wow, very impressive. Thank you,
Yes.
Charles.
Yeah.
Wow. Questions? Trustee Minetto.
I heard two of you say at the end of the year. Does that mean the end of the school year?
At the end of this calendar year.
Okay.
So the plan is for Charles to continue to populate it, and like he said, he's close on a number of items. We just couldn't pull it off for today. Then we'll test it for a couple of weeks just to make sure the functionality works. We'll test it with some of our leadership team folks and a few others. And then if that all goes well, then we'll launch it. So we're thinking, let's say, a month. So we're thinking beginning of December, we'll start pushing out all the communications and make it available in the App Store and the Google Store, and then it's going to be ready to download.
And
Wow. Very cool. Yes.
and this
Trustee
is
Hannigan.
going to be way easier to navigate than our website, right?
Ideally,
Yes,
it's
okay.
another way to look at different information will be available. Our website is a massive repository of information, and some of it is certainly harder to track down than others. This is really going to be focused on the bits of our website that we know are visited most often or that are most relevant to our parents and families. And just before we go, I also want to point out that IT did a ton of hard, good work. Let's get this done. It wasn't just us.
Thank you, IT.
And if I could just add, so what we did is we actually looked at the website and figured out where, which sections of the website are visited most often, which are the areas that our families, our community, our students use the most, and that's where we pull from initially. And to just expand on Charles's answer, the website has so much information, like Charles said, so much information, which makes it difficult to navigate and difficult to quickly find what you need. This will be way easier. It's cleaner. It's more modern. And we're used to using apps with the buttons and just going into, and it'll take you straight to the information you need. So much easier.
Okay. Trustee Cottle and then Interim Superintendent.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for this. This is going to be awesome. And just all the opportunities that provides the district to reach community members, whether it's community meetings with superintendent or a trustee, parents to follow what's going on, all of us to follow what's going on in the schools in our district. We can just follow certain schools and just see all the events. I think this is going to be a game changer to keep the community involved. The things we can use this for the steps in the superintendent process next year. So this is great. I commend you for the work you did to put this together. And I didn't even realize you were even doing this. So I went, let's see what this is.
We kind of kept it a little bit quiet because we weren't exactly sure if we could do it and how well we could do it. And if it had crashed and burned, you would have not heard a single thing. But as Charles in particular started to work on it more and more, then it's like, the capabilities of this, looking at phase 2, is pretty impressive. I mean, we could, when we do a virtual meeting, you can watch the virtual meeting on your phone, you can submit questions. So we're looking at how we can develop those relationships with our families, with our community through this mobile app. So phase 1, but yeah, I think it's a game changer too. Phase 2 is going to be super exciting.
Interim Superintendent.
So this is amazing, and it's been a little bit under a shroud of secrecy, which is, we'll really do it up when we do the unveiling. But so that we don't crash and burn, may I suggest that instead of doing a very small beta, that we may explore the possibility of using one full school as far as getting parents engaged, because I would at least like to know how our parents on a broader spectrum are able to use it. So if we could maybe explore the use of one school, beta testing it before we do the full.
Yeah, I love that idea. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just kudos again, adding to it. It's very exciting. It slipped out a little bit a few weeks ago. I heard about it. There was a rumor. There was a vicious rumor.
How on earth did you hear about it?
I have good
Who
sources.
Let
I
it slip?
have good sources. Just a little birdie told me. But this is even more than I anticipated from, and even from step one. One of the things, and I like that you looked at the website to see what people seek the most often. But because we know that can be cumbersome sometime, have you thought about, just because when we're out in the community, we get a lot of questions about the building, about maybe there being something, I noticed there are 2 little dots at the bottom, so if they're swiping, it's not the second page, but it's not the main page, but the second one, there being a little something on there, maybe that's where trustees go, or something, there may not have been people don't maybe seek it that often, but it's we still, when they want it, we want them to find it easily. And maybe something on, because we get so many questions about that can connect to our WCSD building site and whatever would be appropriate. So not making up, but pulling from what's already there. But so it's easy for them to get to that on those questions about building, maybe something to think about as well.
That'd be a relatively easy implementation.
No, I tell you what, and I love that you're pulling from what we already have. I mean, so much work is already there. And instead of reinventing the wheel and having to redesign, to find a way to pull from that and just make it a little easier for people, to find on that. So just those two thoughts. Maybe something on building and maybe a little trusty one on the second tab too. So we can tell people, hey, I don't know how to find, just get on the app. Just push it right there. Find your trusty, whatever, however it is you guys want to use it. I just think those are things, and there may be some others as well. We want people to find easily. So great job, though, man. This is really exciting.
It's very exciting.
It is really exciting.
Trustee Minetto. Oh, you're still on. Okay. On the My School Bucks, would they actually be able to pay to post payments on that?
Yes, it's actually just a window into their website, which is mobile optimized and works very well.
Great. Wow.
So to call it our
add
app
that
might be
lunch
stretching
money.
a little.
Hello, Mom.
Yeah.
Great.
Makes it really easy to add money to their app.
Yeah, that's great. Nathan, what do you think?
Oh, no. Kudos to all you guys. This is fantastic, and I do think this will especially help in particular with student engagement. Especially, it will help with parents, but I think for a lot of students, it will really clarify a lot of things, particularly snow days, what the bus schedule is. It'll make everything a lot more accessible, and it will help a great deal with transparency. So good job to all you guys. Thank you so much for doing this. Good luck on the debugging.
Yeah, great. Dr. Taylor, another question?
Thank you, Madam President. Student Trustee Noble, is there something on here, something that isn't on here that you think would be helpful for students? That students might want to get to easily that may be helpful?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. I do think that the Infinite Campus link is a very good thing. Although what I would also say is potentially a list of different maps, for instance. So a lot of incoming freshmen have a hard time navigating their various schools. And with the subscription to that school, I think it would be very helpful if they could pull up the app, look on their phone. Where do I go? Okay, this room is here, this one is there.
Great idea.
I think that would be something that could be a good addition. I think everything here is fantastic, though. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, awesome job, and we are so grateful. I mean, this is a huge lift for staff to have done this in-house, and it is elegant, and it is attractive, and it's going to be easy to use. Trustee Caudill.
Just came to my mind. We have some new schools that are opening next year, and some families are going to be switching schools. Maybe something to where they can access information about their new school, whether messages from the principal, information that they're going to need to know, meetings as they get ready to transition out of their existing school into their new school. And that can just be any zone changes, because there's a lot of zone changes for next year, as we all know.
We would like to add information about zoning. But that is going to be phase 2. But I think with the new schools next year, that's going to be easy. As soon as they've got their website up, you can just subscribe to it, and the principals can start posting information on the website, and then it'll come onto the app.
That's great.
Yeah, I think one of the really cool pieces is the Safe Voice. So what it means is that students have that available to them, wherever they are, whenever they've got their phone with them. So
that's great.
I think that's quite important too.
That's great. So when will you be talking about this and making all the announcements publicly as we get ready to launch and you have a launch date? Is that?
Not entirely sure completely. I would say that I would like to have functionality at a point we're very comfortable releasing it to beta within 2 weeks. And then after that, I think it's going to depend a lot on our feedback. We don't want to stumble because we were in a rush.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Oh, Dr. Taylor again.
Sorry, just if I may, just speaking of that and getting the full feedback, maybe there's an opportunity to run it by the student advisory board to get a student lens, because we would never have thought of student maps, for an example, just for their lens, and that gives even more. You've thought about it, you can think about a little more other students just from their lens, and if it can be something that's really useful for them as well. Make it something that might be something to consider.
And we thought we would run it by the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission as well, because this is going to be a great tool when we do have an emergency at one of our schools, because you don't have to log in or find our website. We'll be able to update you immediately on your phone. So it's actually, it's really important around that communications around when we have an emergency in our schools as well. So we thought we would do that. We briefly talked about this Student Advisory Council. I mean, there's so much, there's so much we want to do and so much information we want to gather. We want to get it right, get the functionality right, and then we want to launch it. So.
Great. And maybe the Family Engagement Council would be another great stop. Good. Okay. Well, excellent, amazing. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. Really, really great work. Okay. 4.02 is discussion possible action to approve the executive search and independent contractor agreements to engage JG Consulting LLC in support of the superintendent search process in the amount of $30,000 plus related candidate travel expenses that remain to be determined as a part of the search process for a total amount not to exceed $60,000. Ms. Emily Ellison, thank you for navigating this for us.
Glad to help. Thanks for having me here today. Good afternoon to everyone. This was a funny thing to work through because it's kind of a chicken and egg sort of situation in that we need to have a contract, but many of the specifics of the consultant's work, particularly those outlined on Exhibit A, are still very much to be determined with the work session that we're going to have later on. So you'll see at I believe the top of Exhibit A, it outlines that this schedule of activities to be amended after the scheduled work session with the trustees in order to finalize the specific deliverables and planned activities in each task area and the timeline associated with each. So really the purpose of today is to approve the contract. It's gone through the purchasing and legal process, approve the contract so that we can begin our engagement with Mr. Guerra of JG Consulting, and then we will work to schedule a work session with you all to define these items and make sure that we have our timeline and project plan moving forward. So
now I thought we do have a workshop scheduled for November 12th.
Yes, that's correct. Prior to the next board meeting, we have
and that is a public workshop.
Exactly. I've also, during this process, found Mr. Guerra to be exceptionally easy to work with and flexible in terms, and so the contract is pretty straightforward. I normally probably would have put this on consent, but I just wanted to provide that context and explanation in case there were questions around what decisions have or have not already been made, and then be available to answer any questions if you had any.
Great. Well, I'm glad that he's being responsive right out of the chute, so that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. Any questions any trustees have? And I just want to reiterate for the public that our expectation going into this, Emily had contacted the Council on Great City Schools and others to see what we might expect to pay in fees for superintendent search, and the range that we heard was, I think, $45,000 to $120,000 is typical for a superintendent search, and of course we are the 59th largest school district in the nation, so I'm very pleased that he is mindful of our need to protect the taxpayers' interests and not have this be an exorbitant fee. I think $30,000 for his portion of the fees is very reasonable. So, any other questions, comments? Otherwise, we will Call for public comment. Do we have any public comment? Okay. Well, do we have a motion? Vice President Raymond, thank you.
I'll make sure I get the wording right. I move that the Board of Trustees approves the executive search and independent contractor agreement with JG Consulting LLC in support of the superintendent search process in the amount of $30,000 and authorizes additional funding for travel expenses related to the search in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for a total not to exceed amount of $60,000.
Thank you, Vice President Raymond. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Minetto. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I was just going to ask if we had gotten Trustee Kelly on board. Thank you, Trustee Kelly. How long have you been there?
Pretty much for the whole meeting, Madam President.
Thank you. Great. Well, thank you for making time to be with us. I know you have some things going on at work, so we appreciate that. Okay. Great. Thank you, Ms. Ellison. All right, moving on to 4.03, I see our Chief Financial Officer rising to approach the bench, or whatever we are. Possible action to adopt Washoe County School District Board Resolution 19-014, a resolution authorizing the issuance of the Washoe County School District Nevada General Obligation Limited Tax Verdi Waterline Bond taxable in an amount not to exceed $500,000, and authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to execute the loan contract between the State of Nevada, acting by and through the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Division of Environmental Protection, and the District in connection therewithin. Mr. Mathers, and this is through the revolving loan fund or bond fund at the state?
It is. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. So earlier today, under item 2.07, you awarded a bid for extension of a water main to Verdi Elementary School, and that's a great improvement for that school. The estimated cost of that water line extension is $1.5 million, but we did apply to the state's drinking water revolving fund for a $500,000 commitment from them towards that $1.5 million total cost. So our net cost would be $1 million, roughly. And so this is a principal forgiveness loan, which is kind of unusual. It technically will start out as a loan, and then upon completion of the project, they will forgive that loan. So in essence, this is a grant from that revolving fund because it involves a public entity and water services. But because it is a loan, it constitutes a debt obligation while that loan exists. And so therefore bond counsel, who wrote that kind of verbose title to the board resolution.
Oh, smackdown.
Yeah, well, they're not here, so I can do this. They had opined that this does constitute a debt obligation of the district. Okay. And therefore this bond resolution authorizing issuance of a general obligation bond is required. And again, that loan and also the bond resolution authorizes my position to sign the loan contract. So within the loan contract in section 6, there is the principal forgiveness section, so it's very clear that they will forgive this loan upon completion of the project. They will advance funds to us on a reimbursement basis. So it's a very nice program they offer, and we're taking advantage of it. Okay. So with that, I will send it back to you for approval or questions.
And I just wanted to add for the public record why we have to do this. The Verdi Elementary School has been, I think, on well service.
Yes.
And so frequently has failures of that system, frequently has no access to water in the elementary school. And of course, that's an untenable situation. This is not related to growth, it's related to the difficulties of the existing system that we have. And this will enable us to connect to the Tumwa system, the local water purveyor, and provide reliable, steady, quality water for our students and the staff at Verdi Elementary.
And they'll take over maintenance of the line upon completion of the project. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Mathers, I know this is some loan forgiveness, which is great. Do we pay any interest on it? Is there debt service on the debt?
We do not. It is technically it's a taxable bond, but we do not pay interest while that loan exists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's Mike on the loan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any public comment, JJ? Okay. Do we have a motion? Oh, Mr. Caudill.
Do you want? No. I move that the Board of Trustees adopts Washoe County School District Board Resolution 19-014, a resolution authorizing the district to issue general obligation limited tax Verdi waterline bonds in an amount not to exceed $500,000, and authorizes the chief financial officer to execute the loan contract between the state of Nevada, acting by and through the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Division of Environmental Protection, and the district in connection therewithin.
Second by Dr. Taylor. Motion by Trustee Caudill. Is there any other discussion or any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mathers. All right. Yeah. Item 4.04, presentation and discussion of the 2019-2020 allocation overage process and possible action for the Board of Trustees to provide direction to Interim Superintendent Dr. Kristen McNeil for improvements to the process. And this was requested by Trustee Kelly, and I know you're on the line listening, and I would turn it over now to Dr. Troy Parks, Lead Area Superintendent, Emily Ellison, and Jeff Bozzo. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to kick off the conversation today just to set the stage a little bit. This is a discussion on the allocation and overage process. And I think whenever we talk about allocations and overage, right, there's a lot of sensitivity, of course, because it involves moving staff and moving students, and that can be really difficult. I think one of the most important things to know about this process is a focus on continuous improvement, but also just kind of the reality of the situation, right? And while we're so very grateful for our education champions and our legislators who continue to advocate for more funding for us, the reality that we exist in today is such that there's really not wiggle room in our budget in order to support allocations that aren't supported through student enrollment. So that's one of the factors that really kind of drives this process. But knowing the impact that the process has, we've made adjustments over the years in an effort to be responsive and, like I said, continually improve. And this year, having 3 new schools open and having 20-something sixth grades moving from elementary to middle school, and all of the other things, the new variables that were introduced in this year, we were really able to get all of the parties together to take a really critical look at this process and look at it with a critical eye. And we also know that this is something that's included in Interim Superintendent Dr. McNeil's Pathway to Positive Progress, right? Figuring out ways that we can minimize teacher and student movement. A theme that you'll see throughout the presentation today is that the efforts we undertook this year really are focused on meeting the needs of our students and schools, but within, and you'll see in the collaboration within the kind of the guardrails, right, of the fact that we do exist in an environment that is budget driven, and we also have on the other side the guardrails of human resources and our negotiated agreements with our associations. And so the overage process, we're certainly open to suggestions about procedures and all of the things that might be considered as continuous process improvement, knowing that this is a process that is subject to collective bargaining with each of our associations. So with that, we are excited to share some of the things that happened this year and some of the things that are on the horizon from here.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Jeff Bozzo, Assistant Budget Director. So over the next few slides, I'm going to give you a very high-level overview of our allocation process from the very beginning stages to when we get to count day. So in order to have any allocations, we need enrollment. So we have a district demographer who works on enrollment projections in the fall. That demographer projects enrollment by each individual school and each individual grade level at all those schools. Once the demographer has finished up those preliminary enrollment projections, those are passed on to the school principals for their review and input. So they can ask questions to make sure that, let's say like an apartment complex just broke ground in their school zone. They want to make sure, or just verify with the demographer that that was accounted for in the enrollment projections. So after the review and input, we have the demographer can make adjustments to the enrollment projections, and then we have a finalized enrollment projection. We then take that enrollment projection and apply it to the staffing guidelines through our allocations database. So we upload the projected enrollment into our allocations database, and then we hit a calculate button, and it calculates all the allocations for the upcoming school year. Once those allocations have been calculated, we run a few reports, distribute those to the Office of School Leadership, and the Office of School Leadership then reviews all the allocations, and once they give it their approval, we distribute those allocations to the schools. The allocations are distributed to the schools through what are called staff status forms. So principals can go into our Business Plus software system, run a report that downloads to Excel, and it shows the upcoming projected year allocations versus the current year allocations. So some schools may be gaining allocations, some may be losing, and some might not have any changes. So those allocation changes, in combination with other factors like any upcoming teacher retirements or resignations, all that information gets combined, and those changes impact and kick off our spring transfer overage period. So once we get into the summer, we're still looking at allocations on a weekly basis and making adjustments throughout the summer. So the area superintendents, the business office, and human resources get together every week from the first week of July through the week before school starts. And in those meetings, we're reviewing what we call hotspots. And hotspots are where the infinite campus enrollment during the summer has a significant variance from the projected enrollment, which means schools could be gaining or losing allocations. So when we go into these meetings, we have some mutually agreed upon goals. One of them is to provide timely support and service to our schools, which is why we're meeting on a weekly basis and making decisions. And the other is to stay within the district's budget. So we use the infinite campus enrollment during the summer and compare it to the original projected enrollment. And we also use what's called a confirmed enrollment factor, and that's the percentage of actual students that are registered for the upcoming school year at any given school. So, for example, this year we use a 90% threshold, so the school had to have a minimum 90% confirmed enrollment so that we were very confident that the allocation changes from the projected enrollment to this new infinite campus enrollment, like, these were going to happen. And so where there were allocation gains, we provided long-term substitutes, and then where we were looking, or we were seeing extremely likely scenarios where there were going to be allocation losses, we avoided filling those positions. And the reason being is we don't want to hire someone for a position and then have to overage them when we get to count day. And then we have the long-term sub-allocation so that if a teacher does get overaged, there's a position available for them to get overaged into. And Emily's going to speak on an example of how we were proactive with some allocations this summer.
Yeah, so a big part of this, right, is the communication between the three entities, and then also having that constant communication with the schools and getting their feedback on kind of what they're seeing on the ground. One thing that we encountered this summer, and obviously this is a little bit different year because it was a legislative year, and so we were waiting for confirmation of funding for our, what are they called, literacy specialists?
Yes.
I can never remember if they're learning strategists or literacy specialists.
They became literacy specialists.
I wish they would have changed the letters so I could remember that we switched. So literacy specialists. And so we received funding in order to have a dedicated literacy specialist in every school. And so we were working with the Office of Academics to figure out, what those allocations would look like. And then this group looked at those confirmed enrollment factors and infinite campus enrollment to say, okay, if a school looks like they are potentially in an overage situation, can we then work with that school to identify a literacy specialist from within their staff to resolve the the overage situation early on. A big part of that feedback loop, and again, we engaged our association partners at WEA in this process. So we went to the schools and we said, hey, you look like you might be in an overage situation, but you're getting this LS allocation. Can we resolve it internally? And many schools came back and said, I would love to be able to do that, but here's what my really experienced, really qualified potential literacy specialists are telling me. They're telling me that they don't want to go into a limited term job and then in 2 years, if the funding goes away, be overaged out of our school, because this is somebody who's been with our school for a long time. So we worked with the association and said, can we do something a little bit different in giving what we're calling a position leave, right? So if I'm the 6th grade teacher and I'm going to go be the literacy specialist, instead of me going into a limited term job, my position is backfilled on a limited term basis. And then if I need a spot to go back to at that school, I can go back when my funding changes. So that was a real win for the process in terms of that communication loop and getting feedback from the schools about, you know, what can we do, again, within our guardrails, right? We know we've got budget guardrail, we know we've got contract, and figure out a solution that meets their needs, but then still stays within those lanes. So.
And Ms. Emily, just a real quick clarification for the board, if you all remember, so the literacy specialists were under the mandate of the Nevada Kids Read by Grade 5 legislation, which is mandated for literacy specialists in each one of our elementary schools. This time, actually, we did receive funding for the literacy specialists, which was amazing, but that's how those allocations came up.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to our fall allocation adjustments. So we take enrollment counts the first 4 weeks of school, and again, excuse me, each week the area superintendents, the business office, and human resources are meeting to review these allocation changes. And again, each week we're trying to anticipate changes, gains and losses in allocations, where should we put long-term substitute allocations, and should we avoid filling allocations in any other areas. So once we get to the 4th count, that 4th week count is called count day. And that's a snapshot of our enrollment that allows us to align our budget and our allocations. So on the allocation side, we take the enrollment, run it through the allocations database, and it calculates how many allocations we need to be giving schools. On the budget side, we're making sure that how many allocations we're giving out align with our adjusted per pupil revenue based on this count day enrollment. So it's a true up of our allocations and budget to the original projected enrollment and budget. So again, we run those the calculations through the database. Those formulas and guidelines provide the base of allocations for count day, but there's other factors that play into the final count day allocations as well. And Dr. Parks is going to go over those now.
Doctor?
Doctor, can you back up to the previous slide, though? So yes, good evening, President Simon Holland, Interim Superintendent Dr. McNeil, and members of the board. For the record, Troy Parks. I wanted to add to this as well. This year we were able to make early decisions in the fall because, as Jeff said, we were looking at IC and we were talking with our principals. So a specific example I wanted to share with you that happened at one of my schools. We had 66 kindergartners. And one thing we know that is pretty much a steadfast rule is that about every 25th kindergartner, you are going to be getting an allocation. But one of my schools had 66 and only 4 allocations, and they had 4 allocations filled. So as we looked at the IC numbers, we're like, 4, you should have 90 to 100, and you're at 66. And so we were in that first week of school. Kindergarten is not in session, but they are placing kindergartners. And so we were able to work with the principal and confirm, hey, IC is saying you only have 66 kids. Are you sure you're going to need your allocation? Are you over allocated? And working with the principal, we were able to be proactive, and at the very least, we set that their kindergarten would only have 3 because that's what it warranted. And she was able to be very proactive with her staff about, hey, we have an opportunity for an overage. That's part of the negotiated agreement that we let the staff know first. And somebody volunteered. We didn't have to, 4 weeks later, move students, move a teacher. And so the area superintendents are very thankful that we got this direction and that we are working together with HR and business. And that first goal, that we are here to serve our schools and do everything we can to not have to move students and teachers after those relationships have started. When I go over the next part, I'll give you a brief history. So next slide, please. So yeah, when it comes to final allocations, as we listen to communications and their app, I know from being a teacher and having been overaged, and from being a principal and having had overages at my site and coming to my site, that you kind of get caught up that there's an app for that. There must be a way to push a button, and based on your numbers, you just get the allocations that you think you should get, and it's easy arithmetic and math. But I learned when I became an area superintendent that there are many, many factors that come down to those final decisions on that final count day, and just some of them to review. We have conversations throughout the summer and fall with principals and amongst us with business and HR. You know, how close is a school to triggering an allocation? What are the implications going to mean if we let them know now, if we start thinking, can we be proactive before students even get there? As Jeff mentioned, we are always listening to our principals and our demographer about what building is going on in the areas. At one of our schools, we held off on pulling allocations based on huge apartment complexes going up, and lo and behold, the principal's input was the right input, and we ended up holding off on pulling those allocations. Another factor we look at is the star rankings. Our most impacted schools, those 1 and 2 source schools, our formulas are a little bit more forgiving of them not when you look at the formulas, they trigger sooner where they get their next allocations. When we have conversations, we always consider where they're achieving. And another thing, when we get to that fourth count day, we're talking with our principals about, hey, your numbers are looking like you're going to warrant, based on your student population, another allocation. Do you have a plan for utilizing that? And if we were to get you an allocation, what are 3 or 4 ideas that you have? And sometimes our principals say, we don't feel like we need that allocation because they've worked with us in the past about there are some other schools that might be in greater need. Licensing is a huge factor that we look at. It affects all the different levels at elementary schools. Most teachers are licensed K-8, but then some are only licensed K-2. At the middle and high school, they're licensed by subject. So when we hear a middle school saying, yeah, our math classes are super packed and we have 45 kids, it's not as easy as going, oh, well, middle school B has an overage, so we can just move you over, because middle school B is probably going to look at their schedule and go, oh, we're going to need to overage the least enrolled classes, and so it's not going to match what they need in their mathematics schedule. And then, obviously, in the past, we've had schools where we've been on multi-track. They're exceeding capacity. They have modulars. So a lot of those factors weigh into those final decisions before we say, sorry, based on your enrollments, we need to move teachers, which means we have to move some students around as well.
Yes, go ahead, Vice President Raymond.
I have a question around the kind of those adjustments, I guess, or when you're looking at the final count. Which are the programs, the special programs within schools that are included in the count? I know that the dual language classes are part of that count per grade, but am I right in that the CLS classes are not, or can you clarify that part for me?
For the record, Jeff Bozzo. So there's two populations that we make adjustments for in the enrollment projections. So one of them is our self-contained special ed classrooms. So they spend most, if not all of their day in those self-contained classrooms. So we have a factor of, I believe it's 0.75, and we back out, so 75% of the self-contained special ed students. And then the GT, SWAS, and magnet programs, where again, those students are in the GT program most, if not all of the day. We back those students out as well. Does that answer your question?
It does. So is dual language the only program that doesn't get backed out? Is that the right
Right.
word?
We don't back out dual language students.
Is it the only program that you don't? Are there any other programs that would be counted that are like that, where they're in a?
No, those are the only two that we have.
Because it just seems that they are
I could
sort of
add a
unfairly,
little clarification, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
For the record, Troy Parks. So as Jeff said, those are backed out, so to speak, because they're already allocated for in the GT magnet program allocations or in your special education allocations. The other program that I don't believe we have any backing out of is our EL population, which we factor. They are given allocations based on their English language learners population. So those students are counted as regular student, much like the dual language program.
Okay. And I bring it up, I know it really only impacts, I think, one school, and it's, I think, Jessie Beck, that has a dual language program that has maybe a student count in the 4th grade of 10 students, but that then means that the other 4th grade classes have 36 students in each of them. And so it's hard to explain to families. I mean, you can explain the averaging of the 3, but it's hard to explain why their kid is in the classroom with 36 students and there's a classroom with 10 students in it. And I think it's a wonderful program, and so I hate to think that we're penalizing a school for, doing a program that maybe doesn't have that level of enrollment that, but it's, to me, not dramatically different than a SWAS program, I guess, in some ways. So there's no answer for that. Just expressing my thoughts.
I think that's...
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think with the two-way immersion program, the TWE program, we staff it based on the number of students within that classroom, and every year, and now that we have the 3 TWE programs, every year those allocations move up in the grade levels. And one of the issues is that in the actual TWE classroom, you're going to have less students because that's the basis and the ratio of having an integrated type program such as that. And then I also just wanted to touch base on, so for self-contained programming, for special education students, we have the strategies classroom, the comprehensive life skills classroom, the social intervention program. Those would be the self-contained classrooms as well. And then also, Jeff, I don't know if you want to kind of go into regular resource around special education and how we allocate for regular resource, since most of those students are actually within the regular education classroom.
Okay. For the record, Jeff Balzo, for the resource students, those are not accounted for separately. They're included in the school's enrollment, so general ed allocations are calculated using them in the enrollment, or using those students in the enrollment. And then for the resource program, the ratio is 24-1. So for every 24 students that are in the resource program, we have one teacher. So, and that's once they hit 25, they get an additional teacher.
That's a lot. Wow. Okay. Dr. Parks, did you have more? Or?
All right, and I think I'm turning it back to business and HR.
Okay, so after all of those factors are considered for the count day allocations, the area superintendents who are in communication with the principals, and along with the business office and human resources, we finalize all of the allocations, and then we run some reports that show here are all the allocation changes from where you stood before count day and after count day. And then those reports are distributed to the Office of School Leadership. They communicate with the schools, and all those changes kick off the fall overage period. And now Emily's going to discuss the fall overage placements.
So just to add to this slide, we wanted to share some information on what we look at from an overage process perspective. And I feel like there are really two data points that are important for us to understand in our practice. One obviously is the number of overages that we have during each overage period. And so, while some of that is outside of our control, obviously because of funding and enrollment, I think what we will see as we continue to refine this process is, particularly for the fall overage, we hope to drive that number down, right? The more we can push on enrollment and having really good numbers to work from, the earlier we can work with schools like we did this year in order to, communicate where they're at, understand what they're thinking about either their gains or losses, and try to make some of that movement happen before the school year begins. And so when we get to the actual fall overage, we hope to see that number decreasing every year. Obviously, there's a legislative component to this, so when we did look at the data for the last few years, it goes like this, right? Because our funding is up in the air sometimes until the last minute, and so spring is obviously a much bigger overage process for us as well because we're projecting into the future. But another data point that's really important for us from a service level perspective is once we are in the overage process, we want to be really sensitive to the fact that this is impactful for families and this is really impactful for students, right? The school year's already happening. People are settled. You have relationships. You have your work best friend, right? And so if you're going to be moving, that's a hard transition. And so the support that we provide in human resources is important not only for taking care of the employee, but we also want to make sure that when the overage process begins and we halt hiring so that we can make sure everybody who needs a home gets one, that's impactful for the schools that aren't getting an overage, right? So there are typically more jobs on the board than overages, but we have to make sure that we have a spot for everyone and that it's the best possible match. And so we look to understand when we put together the timeline, we have a target for how fast the process is going to happen and when we're going to reopen the jobs that remain after the overage placements are done. And we're trying to figure out ways that we can support the employees and support the principals as a part of that process to shorten the amount of time that overage actually takes. And so how many days difference is there between reopening the job board and when we thought we were going to? And I am happy to say that we're seeing that number for the fall overage, decrease year over year for the last 3 years. So in the 2017-18 school year, we opened the jobs on the day that we said that we were going to. In the following school year, we opened the jobs 4 days sooner than we thought we were going to, and this year we opened the jobs 3 days sooner than we thought we were going to based on the timeline. So I think that's a win for schools and a win for employees. Now, Emily Ellison for the record.
Thank you.
So, when we think about, and I think Dr. Parks alluded to this earlier, when we think about the guidelines, there are obviously some really objective data points that we can look at, right? There's the staffing guidelines and when you trigger or when you don't. And that provides a level of objectivity. But this year, combining that data with the enrollment data and using that confidence factor so that we could really understand, what was good data and what was a little bit of noise that we had to take into consideration, and then combining it with some of those subjective data points that that Troy talked about on the slide with the bubbles, right? There's more than just the math behind it. There's all of those things that have to be taken into consideration. And I think having everybody at the table this year and having that touch point happen so often really glued those things together, so that for schools at least, and the feedback that we've gotten and what we hope to get more feedback of is that it feels less subjective, right? It feels like there's more system to the process and that we really are looking at it from kind of a holistic perspective. We talked a minute ago about decreasing the number of overage placements, so we again hope, especially for fall, by being proactive during the summer and having those conversations early on, that we can see that number continue to go down every year. And this year, during the fall overage process, all of our placements were what we call one-to-one matches. So it was a situation where the school preferenced a particular candidate, the candidate preferenced a particular school and position, everybody was happy. We didn't even have to have the overage placement meeting where we go through and figure out where everyone should go. It was just lots of one-to-one connections. So that was a big win as well. What else here? Obviously, the goal for all of this, right, and Dr. Parks touched on this earlier too, is we want to minimize student movement. I think having those conversations early on allowed, like in the example that he gave of Kinder, allowed principals to plan right out of the gate for, even if I have all my positions filled and I know I might have an overage, at least I can arrange my classrooms in such a way that once the process gets started, the students and parents don't feel it as much. And then, of course, we talked about the lane, right? We have to stay within our budget lane. We have to stay within the contract and make sure that we're really kind of maximizing the resource to meet student and school needs. Oh, but we didn't talk about the future. You have one for the future, and so do I.
For the future, again, for the record, Troy Parks. So, as we began this work, we really talked about, as Emily said, we got to put systems into place so that we can point to and say, here is the systematic way we go about this. So we're excited to be bringing because we really started doing this in July, this process to our customers, which are our principals, and we're going to be doing that at the Lead, Teach, Learn meeting in December. And as a part of that process, we will be seeking their feedback about continuous improvement. What are your thoughts about how we could make this better? What went well for them during the summer and fall, and learn from this new process that we have in place. 'Cause my favorite saying, continuous improvement requires continuous improvement.
Drop the mic. Yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah.
I hesitate to share my bullet now. That was big. The other thing that we are excited about is working with our associations to talk about the overage process itself, and we have some tentative agreements on work groups to say, the process as outlined in the contracts for each of the three major groups that are impacted has been that way for quite some time. And so how do we get everyone around the table to talk about, knowing what the situation is, right, and how we're trying to work through getting the numbers out there and the allocations distributed, when it comes time to actually do the overage process, what should that look like, and how can we make tweaks to that process to continue to better serve our customers?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my thought.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank you for the work that you've done. I had fewer comments this year than in a very long time regarding allocations, and I knew around the time it was happening, but usually it's like on my radar, and I know because I can tell because of people calling in with questions and all the emails that we get and so on. But it was much more limited this year, really, and I think in large part because of the work that you did, and you minimized the movement, the disruption. The schools were involved. The teachers were involved because in the past, frankly, some of the concerns and comments came from some of our staff, right? And because they probably felt more a part of the process because they were notified on the front end. Just use a lot of things that just really help make it better. I mean, and there are things that we know we can always get better, and you did a lot of work to make this process better. So thank you, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yes, ditto. Yes, Vice President Raymond.
I'm a doctor.
Sorry, I know. Sorry. Not yeah, it's not too late.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it seemed like this year went really smoothly, and I know it's always hard, even if only one school or one teacher is impacted, but I think it's just reassuring to know that how hard you're all working to try to minimize that and to keep it from impacting, as many people. And I would just ask, I don't know if it's possible, but maybe just for the future to consider if the TWE, the two-way immersion or dual language program, is the only one that kind of falls in this category of being part of the count, even though it's a separate classroom, if maybe there's some thought to whether they could be considered as a separate allocation from the regular classrooms. So. And maybe they're financially, maybe that just totally doesn't work, but if you might just consider what that would look like.
Okay. Good. Yes, I know this has been a lot of work, and I know that it takes a lot to look at it with fresh eyes and to find new ways that we can put this thing together that we haven't done before. So I really appreciate that, and I also appreciate the commitment to outreach to some of the affected folks that are really close to it, and maybe they have ideas as well. So very much appreciate that. I know we have a representative from WEA here. Do you want to say anything, Tom? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Is there any? And Trustee Kelly, did you have anything you wanted to add from the phone land, since this was something you had requested?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like everyone else said, thank you to staff for just continuously working at this and looking at ways to improve. Last year we did get quite a few calls from constituents and some staff that were either upset or they were confused about why certain things were happening. And this year, nothing like that. And I really attribute that to just continuous improvement, looking at ways to make this process better. I think the one question that I had, as I've been watching through the presentation and thinking about this, is that on the fourth week, the district does a district-wide count. And I know from experience that students are more traumatized at the elementary school level if they have to move or if their teacher moves than students at the middle or at the high school level. So my question was, instead of doing the entire district at week 4, has there ever been any thought about having it staggered a little bit so that perhaps the elementary schools would go first, maybe the 3rd week, and then the middle school could be the 4th week and the high school the 5th week? Or is it better from a systems perspective to just do the entire district in 1 week? I just was curious what your thoughts were on that.
Anyone want to take a stab at that? Jeff?
For the record, Jeff Balzo. So historically, we had used the count day because that was or the fourth week count, because that was the count that our funding was based off of. Then we changed to the average daily enrollment, but we still use that fourth count because that's when enrollment at the beginning of the year tends to stabilize. And so, just a quick example, over the last 4 years, the average increase of students from week 3 to week 4 across the district is 134 students. Now, 60,000 plus students, that doesn't sound like much, but each one of those students is in a certain grade level at a certain school and could be the difference on hitting or triggering an allocation. So again, you know, that's just the allocation side, but then you have to look at that for how does that impact our budgeted per pupil revenue. So that's why we use the fourth count and have continued to do so.
And Jeff, if I could just add, do we have any information about the trends of that number? How has that changed over time? Is that pretty constant, that it's around 134 kids?
Hold on one second. So in 2017, it was 107. This is the week 3 to week 4 increase. 2018, or FY18, 233 students.
Wow.
FY19, so last year was 166, and this year was 31, which is a lot less than all the other years.
Wow.
But we did have the count this year from week 3 to week 4. Week 3 was the Friday before Labor Day,
Right.
or Labor Day,
Yeah.
and then the Tuesday after was the week 4 count.
Yeah.
So had we had maybe like a few more days for that week, that number could have been a little more, but.
It doesn't seem like there's any trend. It just, I was just wondering if there is something we can do in terms of communications and public relations to talk to folks about the importance of making sure we know about your child, because that impacts the class size that your child will have in school and many, many other things. So yeah, there doesn't seem to be any pattern, but it's certainly still worth doing that communication. Yeah. Interim Superintendent?
So just a couple of points. So we actually did send, to that point, communications out to schools to make sure that you're keeping in connection with your families, getting the word out. At the Family Expo, we did a lot of front loading as far as, we need to get your children registered. So as far as when the first day of school starts, so obviously within Washoe County, we start a lot earlier than other districts, and so to get that message out. But also to your point, Trustee Kelly, we also have to be very cognizant around our secondary schools, and so we kind of take a look at our secondary schools because they have to build, if you recall, master schedules. And so it's a little bit different within a secondary type of setting to remove an allocation when you have that master schedule all set up, because now you're starting to affect courses that students are enrolled in. And so when the area superintendents and HR and business get around the table, that is something that they take a look at. And just to your point, we actually shortened the amount of time this week, I want to say by a week or almost 2 weeks as far as the actual movement of teachers, so that we can get that done before the October break, so that when students were able to come back from October break, that everything was set into place. And so this is, we've talked about the continuous improvement. I feel that we were much more transparent this year. We reported out the numbers, but it was really the effort with HR, our Office of School Leadership, business, and getting with our principals and making sure that they shared that message that it is based on student enrollment. So when you are a principal, you're carrying that message. This is not the district. This is my enrollment at my site. And so that's how my allocations are based. So the district did not take an allocation. It is that messaging, which is very accurate, that is based on student enrollment. And so to keep hammering that message that although we understand that our budget is based around student enrollment, to make sure that our principals carried that message to families, because it is something that is really complicated to understand. But I, again, just want to do a shout out to our area superintendents who kept on talking with principals on a daily, nightly basis. They were tired of hearing from me. So I want to thank you all for your hard work and the hard work of our principals. HR, I mean, when Emily was talking about we had the 3 new schools, we had the movement of the 6th grade up, this was actually the perfect storm this year. So thank you so much. And business and finance to carry that tag as far as this is our budget, area superintendents, this is your budget, this is what you need to stick to. But it was done in a very collaborative, kind, and respectful manner. So I just really appreciate that.
That's great. Nathan.
Hi. Well, thank you guys so much for this proposal. But I did have a question about the 4th week count day. So this year in particular, I knew that it fell on a 3-day weekend, if I'm not mistaken. And what I saw when I was at school are a bunch of students who took off a day early to have vacation with their families. That made me think, well, what if this 4th day count week is not necessarily an accurate reflection? So I'm wondering what cross-verification processes you guys have for that 4th week count day, if any.
It's for the record, Jeff Bozzo. So we go through more counts after the 4th week. It's not just here's the 4th week and we're done counting students. We take the average daily enrollment, which is how we get our funding, and then additionally we have a validation day, which I think is October 1st. And so we're throughout the entire year we're continuously counting students to make sure that we have a drastic decrease or increase in the amount of students mid-year that we can adjust accordingly as well. Does that answer your question?
That does it. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Yeah. So it's not attendance, it's enrollment, which I had to get corrected on myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would, for the record, Troy Parks, counts 1, 2, and 3 would be our cross-verification because you're right. Some people are going to take a early holiday and not be there at school, but we've already accounted for them, and we know that they have been in the school and entered the school, so they're accounted for in those week 1, week 2, week 3 counts.
Pretty thorough. Okay. Any other questions? And Trustee Kelly, did you get your questions answered?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Is there any public comment, JJ? Okay. Do we have any direction for Interim Superintendent McNeil? Otherwise, I think we're confident you all are on the right track and working hard at a very difficult process. So thanks for all this work. Okay. Okay. We do have one more presentation today, and that is a very important one. 4.05, presentation on the digital curriculum and teacher communities project, including current work and plans for the 2020-2021 school year. So we have Mr. Sidford and Ms. Barsdorf and Tara. All right, welcome.
Thank you, President Simon Holland, and good afternoon. I'm very pleased to say good afternoon with the last presentation of the afternoon today. Interim Superintendent McNeil, Board of Trustees, appreciate being here. I'm Robert Sidford. I'm the Chief Information and Innovation Officer. I'm joined by Deborah Beiersdorf, our Chief Academic Officer, and by Tara Graves, our Project Coordinator for 21st Century Learning. We're pleased to present to you today on the Digital Curriculum and Teacher Communities Project and provide an update on that project. Tara is going to be doing the bulk of the presentation today as she's deeply involved in that work. And so we thought today, and I don't have the clicker, so nope, you're fine. Thank you. We were, by the way, going to be joined today by Kendra Fox, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, whose department is heavily involved in this work, and she had, I believe, a family emergency or incident, and so she was unable to join us today, so she sends her apologies. So we're going to start by talking briefly about sort of what is this digital curriculum project, why we need that, and then Tara's going to really dive into kind of what it looks like and how we're progressing with that work and how it's helping us to really consolidate and coordinate our digital resources around curriculum and our digital tools and those sorts of things. So Basically, as you know, we have a number of digital learning resources that are used across our district. We have core curriculum resources, supplemental resources, digital tools, which we've talked to you about at length. And this project really makes sure that these are accessible to all of our students and staff in a way that is centralized and coordinated, that we have common access to those tools. And through that, because of that, that these resources can be collaboratively developed and owned by stakeholders across the district. Next slide. Basically, when we go to talk about our project goals, Team WCSD, and Tara will talk more about that name, I believe, which is our name for our digital curriculum project. This is really a single, the goal here is to create a single ecosystem of resources that enables collaboration for staff to advance student achievement and also provides equitable access to those learning resources across our district. That's a really key goal for this project, is equitable access to those resources. Tara is now going to take the helm and talk more about details of how these dialogues across our district are being empowered.
Okay. President Simon Holland, Interim Superintendent McNeil, and members of the board, good afternoon. Tara Graves for the record. So we started with a steering committee last spring and met a few times just to discuss the structure of the curriculum notebooks and what should go in them. And we've continued the steering committee this year, getting more feedback on all the stuff that's been added to the notebooks, and also discuss the timeline, which we'll look at in a few slides, and our plan for rolling out for K through 8.
So I'm going to jump in there next. Deborah Beiersdorf, Chief Academic Officer. So I think the beauty of this project is that we have been working closely with so many departments within the district, and we've listed them there for you to see. So content notebooks are just kind of what they mean. They're content notebooks. So it's taking all of our current pacing guides, or our adopted curriculum, supplementary materials, and putting them in one place that's easy for teachers to access. So I was thinking about the previous presentation on our new app, and we talked about our website, and there's a lot of information on the website, and there's a lot of clicks that teachers have to go through right now to see, all right, what am I teaching in third grade teacher? It's a math lesson, it's an ELA, English language arts lesson, social studies lesson. So the beauty of this project is it's going to bring it all together, one easy place for our teachers to be able to access. That's one of the beauties of it. There's other things that the project will do as well. We also have added something that we call essential strategies. So these are tips, things for teachers to think about as they're accessing the adopted curriculum and they're thinking about the students that are in their classroom. So maybe it's a teacher who needs to be very aware of the needs of her English language learners in the classroom. What are some things that she may want to consider in scaffolding curriculum, thinking about grouping of students, thinking about guided reading lessons. Maybe it's also special education, a teacher who's very aware of the individual education needs of her special education students. What are some tips or some strategies that she may want to think about as well? And those pieces of information have all been added or are in the process right now of being added to these notebooks, again, making it very, very easy for teachers to be able to access. I wanted to give a shout out, and if Kendra had been here, she would have shared this with you. It's taken a lot of work. This is, I'm not going to lie and say it's been an easy lift. It has taken a lot of work in putting everything together in one easy place. And this work, along with Tara, has been led by our curriculum and instruction department. That wouldn't be a surprise. So they have, for the most part, we're almost done. January 6th is our our due date. I've converted all course guides, pacing guides, units, etc., to the OneNote program, which is in the Microsoft platform. I want to make it real clear here too. These are not specific lesson plans. Our teachers still, through their PLC, professional learning community, focus, working with their other grade level teachers, working with their site administrators, are still responsible for building their lesson plans, because lesson plans need to meet the needs of the students that are in their classroom. Our goal by January 6th is to complete all materials for K-8 in math and science. Actually, I'm going to back it up and say that is completed. And then our other subject areas will be done by January the 6th. Again, kindergarten through 8th grade.
Okay, so leading up to this, we discussed in the spring when I presented about our Microsoft training that we had going on. So you can see the numbers there of numbers of participants who have completed different training in our different offerings and also different audiences. Go ahead and go to the next one. And this year we are continuing that with various opportunities for district level folks to get trained in Teams and OneNote and all the other Microsoft tools. And then for teachers as well to attend either a blended class or take the on-demand online class. And then the curriculum folks and all the departments that are contributing to the essential strategies can come to open labs throughout the day. We have two days every week that we are available to help them, so if they need additional help. And then we also have training scheduled for the 2 new schools opening in the fall for all their lead teachers and their staffs to get trained on all of the Microsoft tools. And then for our existing one-to-one schools, we will be training them on how do they use this digital curriculum in the spring. So they'll go through kind of a pilot of this training at our 5 one-to-one schools. And then potentially we will do a back-to-school professional learning somewhat in July. And on that note of digital curriculum, these are just some of the school districts that are using a digital curriculum in one way or another. And I know that we did have some principals and district leaders visit in Washington. So we are hanging with the big dogs. Yeah. And so what does it look like? Well, here's some pictures from Pulikitas and Desert Skies and Sky Ranch. What does it look like? It looks like kids have technology in their hands. It looks like they are in control of their learning, and they're very active. They're collaborative. You can see up there with some of those robots. It's really an exciting thing to see if you haven't gotten out to one of the new schools or the one-to-one schools to go see that in action. It's pretty cool. All right, next one is teacher communities. This got a soft launch in September with our Leaders Network. What these are teams in Microsoft Teams, and teachers are given the codes to join their grade level teacher community. In some of our communities, we have some pretty active participation. We've also had requests from teachers if they can connect to other teachers across the district and have their kids be in a team and actually do projects together. So that's something that we're hoping to see, down the road. This is exciting that it's already being requested. So that's the intent here. That's just a snapshot of some of those, and you're welcome to join any of these communities. It's on the digital learning tab are the codes if you're interested. And every team or community will have these guidelines which sets forth the norms for participating in the communities. It's not a place for complaining or griping about anything, but it should be a positive place for collaboration and supporting one another and getting resources.
Can they, if they're not complaining, can they also make suggestions about how to make it better?
Absolutely. In fact, we in my department, we've been monitoring all of these communities. So all of my staff has joined every single community, and we monitor that. And there's some guidelines in there that if there's an issue with inappropriate use of the community, that we'll address it. But yeah, it is very exciting to see that teachers are wanting this kind of communication across the district.
Good. Okay.
And go ahead and go. So this is where, sorry, go back to the, yeah. So this is where all the digital curriculum lives as well. So this is a snapshot of a first grade teacher community. You can see across the top how it says conversations, files, guidelines, and then ELA, math, science, and so on. That's where all those content notebooks will live for them. And then just some next steps. Debbie already mentioned that January 6th is when the K through 8, all of the content notebooks will be complete by curriculum and instruction. And then all of the essential strategies, so for 21st century learning, equity and diversity, family school partnerships, the EL department, GATE, SEL, SPED, all of those will be added to all of those notebooks by March 27th. And then we will do kind of a train the trainer idea with our Leaders Network meeting in March on how do you use these notebooks. And then again, I mentioned before about the back to school professional learning opportunity. That is it.
Excellent. Excellent. So I want to thank you all for all of this work. I know it's a tremendous effort to pull all of this together for all of those grades. And I do know that in school visits I've made in previous years, one of the things that people have said is, I feel like I'm not getting enough support for what I need to be teaching. I don't, on a day-to-day basis, I don't know everything I need to know, and I would like to be able to get that kind of support from other people, know about best practices. So I think it's really a move in the right direction. What do we align our curriculum content with to make sure that what we're putting out there to all of our teachers is really best practice and is making sure it's aligned with content standards?
So Deborah Beiersdorf for the record. So I think that work has started, and the heavy lift has been with the Curriculum and Instruction Office, that everything that is going in these content or these notebooks is aligned to Nevada academic content standards. Our supplementary materials, anything else that a teacher is using is also aligned to standards as well. And I want to also stress, I know Tara talked about it a bit, but the professional learning will also be professional learning for our school leaders. So our principals can help support this with their teachers as well.
Great.
So, and then I think ongoing, I'm a member of quite a few of the communities, and it's pretty cool to see what teachers are posting. But I think that's also the work of Tara and her department, Tara as a project director, that we are making sure that what's being posted is good material, for our students. And then also to the fact that I use the third grade teacher as an example, we're a fairly transient school district. So we want to make sure if we have our students that are moving across schools, that they have access to the same materials that all students have access to. And I think that will help us with our results and how our students do in their testing and so forth. So there's a lot of, I think, great, as the ripples go out on this project, a lot of great things that we'll see from it. And then it also should drive professional learning needs as well. Mm-hmm. So we can be strategic, we can really hone in on where the needs are, because we'll be monitoring the communities as one way of feedback from our schools and from our teachers.
Great. And I get the sense that this is not boxing people in. It's really to lift them up and give them lots of flexibility of how they use that content, but still provide a baseline, as you say, so that every third grader has the opportunity throughout our district to have the most excellent content we can deliver. Yes, Mr. Sidford.
For the record, Robert Sidford, just to add on to what Debbie was saying and what you were just saying, another piece of this that is important is the essential strategies that were mentioned in the beginning, which is our department's best practices are now able to be represented within the content, within the curriculum that's available to teachers, and so that really helps us to spread the capacity of those departments to really support good instruction through their lenses as well.
That's great. Can I see? Yeah, Ms. Graves.
Tara Graves, for the record. Also, it's, when a teacher takes professional development, they get, materials or whatever goes on the shelf, never to be seen again, unfortunately. But when you have all of the strategies and everything mapped to whatever the content is you're learning, it's right there, ready to go. It kind of brings that professional learning to the point of need in that notebook. So I'm very excited about that, and teachers that have seen this are very excited about that too. So they don't have to go search for all of those materials. It's just right there.
Great. Okay. Ms. Minetto.
So the training, the teacher training, when would that be done? I mean, is that during school time? Is that, not school time, but within the contract, or is it an IP credit or stipend? I'm always thinking of these things.
Yeah. Tara Graves, for the record. Yes, so it's in-service credit is offered to them, and it's after contract time. We also have the online class that they can do. Of course, it's off contract, but they can get credit for that as well.
Dr. McNeil?
So thank you all so much. I know what a heavy lift this was when this was proposed last year. I wasn't quite sure if we were going to be able to get to this point, and I know what a heavy lift was on all of your areas, IT and especially the curriculum and instruction department, because everything that you see on that chart had to be placed into the teams, and so that was such a huge effort. And so please give our thanks to Kendra and her entire team. And then also, one thing that I had asked is sometimes our district doesn't have to be the first in everything. And so the reason why you see that slide, what other districts are doing around the country, is I really wanted the presentation to highlight that there are other districts around the country that are moving in this direction as well. So thank you for showing that.
Do we have anything correlating digital curriculum use and student outcomes yet? Do we, not necessarily for us, but some of those other districts, is it moving the dial forward?
For the record, Robert Sidford, that is a great question and a really important question that we need to address. There are studies that have not necessarily linked technology use and digital curriculum to student outcomes in terms of achievement and academics, but in terms of soft skills, digital skills, those sorts of things. So that's where we have to be very intentional about, okay, this is not necessarily an initiative to in and of itself advance student achievement. This is about how do we coordinate the tools that we have available so that they're more accessible to our students, more accessible to our teachers, and through that we can potentially see student achievement gains in that. Directly tying to this initiative, I'll be honest, that's going to be difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe that's something we can entice the University of Nevada Graduate School of Education to partner with us on. Okay, other questions? Well, again, thank you for this great work. I know that our educators appreciate it, and I think there's a lot of excitement around it. So we just we have more work to do and a lot to learn about how this works for people in the classroom, and I really appreciate all the work and the commitment to looking at how we can do it better. So thank you. Okay. Do we have, let's see, there's no action on this item, is there? Okay. Okay, well, thank you all. And, yeah, we have, it's not an action item, so we don't, yeah, but we will in a moment. Board reports? Oh, Okay, do we have public comment on non-action items? Oh, we can, we might as well. Go ahead, John. Yeah, come on, go ahead. Absolutely, yeah.
There's no plug in this
It's
podium.
not worth not.
My name is John Ippolito. I'm the president of Protect Nevada Children, and I have 2 kids left in the district. I just wanted to be clear. What we would like is the parents' ability to opt out of their children sharing personal data, information, and schoolwork with ed tech vendors, especially the free ed tech vendors. Basically, anytime a kid has to log in, they're sharing data with somebody. We would like, ideally, the district would educate parents on the dangers of their kids sharing data with these vendors, but at minimum, let parents opt their kids out. And the excuse that it's too much work for teachers, I think that's bogus. As an educator, I don't believe that at all. I understand the complications, and I understand what Kristen said at the last meeting, but you can work around that. So far at Incline High School, other than my son's AP computer science class, there's very little that I would consider computer education. It's mostly watching videos, sharing personal data, personal information, schoolwork with ed tech vendors. These 9th graders are spending 2 to 3 hours a day in front of the screens for schoolwork and homework, and I think it's ridiculous. What do we need the teachers for? Again, the good teachers aren't doing this, in my opinion. It's not the good ones. Katie's question about the research. The latest report that I got from Reboot showed that kids, for example, at Nick Polikitis, kids that spend, quote, 4th grade students who reported using tablets in all or almost all classes scored 1 full grade level behind in reading by 4th grade. That's what you can expect at Nick Polikitis, a year behind by 4th grade. The New York Times, I mentioned this article earlier. Some quotes from this article that was published in December. Kids should not have to sacrifice privacy for education. Quote, concerns over illegitimate sharing of and access to student data have been raised by parent groups, consumer watchdogs, and privacy advocates, many of whom have begun public awareness campaigns and legal battles. They're rightly worried, for example, about the fairness of college admissions processes that rely on student data profiles shared by personalized learning companies. Laws in the United States offer students very little digital privacy security or protection against the wiles of the industry. Tech companies should not be permitted to collect data on children and profile them using their personal data without a parent or guardian's meaningful consent to the data collection. But that's exactly what's happened with many of these vendors you guys have allowed into the schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ippolito.
You're welcome.
Is there any other public comment? Okay. All right. So let's see if there are board members who wish to make board reports. Go ahead, Trustee Minetto. We'll just go around the table.
Well, I just had a fabulous day yesterday, going from school to school to school with our state superintendent, and I even got to see some of my previous students at one of the schools, so I was extra excited about that.
Great, thank you. Trustee Caudill. Okay. Trustee Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. I was able to be involved in one of those visits, and it was really, it was just an amazing job. They're doing some fascinating things at Maxwell. I hadn't been to Maxwell since I think my first year on the board. It isn't in my district, so I don't get there very often. But man, it was fantastic to see the work that they were doing, and they showed some fantastic students. It was awesome. It was really good. But what I wanted to share is I also had a chance to attend. For the first time, the national meeting of the Council of Great City Schools with our interim superintendent, and it was quite a conference. Quite a conference. It feels, and I've enjoyed my time going to NASB, certainly, but it feels different because they're all large schools. And so you get a little different feeling sometimes where you can be in some sessions when you aren't at a conference with large schools and they're doing some amazing things, and then you find out they have 1,200 kids in the district. And so it's like, yeah, that's not quite. And we have high schools larger than that. And so you didn't run into, and it's still great work. It doesn't mean great work isn't being done in those places, but it isn't as transferable when the schools are so small. When the districts are so small. So this was really, it was a different kind of conference, and I really enjoyed it. And we're putting some stuff together. We're going to have a little more comprehensive report, right? Interim soup for our next meeting, because we just got back Friday night. Was that Friday? Saturday, yeah, that's what I meant. Saturday night. But just to show you a couple things from it. But it was really good. It was great to be a part of it. And I just look forward to our interfacing with them more.
Great, and thank you for attending. Appreciate that. Okay. Student Trustee Noble, do you want to make a board report?
Well, I don't really have a whole lot to report. Today was obviously a very tough day for us, especially over at Worcester High School. But just generally, our Student Advisory Council is continuing to work on a variety of proposals that we are formulating, including some regarding the possible establishment of new curriculum regarding ethnic studies, and one regarding the possible establishment of student councils at various schools throughout the district, going down to potentially the elementary school level.
Great.
And so we'll have more on that for you guys soon.
Great. Well, you all doing great work, and we're very grateful for our Student Advisory Council. Trustee Calvert. Okay. Vice President Raymond?
Well, I don't have a whole lot to report on. That I think, just attending a lot of the same meetings and events that others and school visits. But I'll just highlight one thing. I was able to join the interim superintendent at a community ambassador event at Desert Skies that included members of the Latino community, and it was just a great opportunity to sit down and hear more from them about kind of concerns that in their roles in the community as leaders and for different organizations, kind of concerns they're hearing, things they appreciate that we're doing, and so just a nice chance to kind of catch up and hear more from them. And I was honored to be able to join them.
Great. Excellent. Well, I've been busy and, like others, went on some of the superintendent visits and was at Sparks High School and Sparks Middle School and Maxwell Elementary School yesterday with Trustee Minetto and Trustee Taylor for part of it. And Dr. McNeil did a wonderful job speaking to the seniors of Sparks High School. It was very moving, very inspiring. So I just hats off to you on that one. Attended the Galena Zone concert, which is just so inspiring to see the elementary and middle and high school kids all together performing. And one of the highlights was that the pianist who accompanied the assembled choir on one of the, or a couple of the pieces was a student that I believe was autistic, and very powerful, not a dry eye in the place. He's got perfect pitch. He can hear anything once and play it and then transpose it into another key. And he was so excited about everyone's appreciation for him. It was just so heartwarming, so heartwarming. Went to Huffaker with interim superintendent, and interim superintendent and I did a presentation of the Washoe County Commission last week, and that was very well received, which was great. Enjoyed the virtual forum that Trustee Cottle was with me on, and that I think was a huge success, and we'll look forward to doing more of that in the future. Went to DePoli, Run for Education with Vice President Raymond, and also Trustee Kelly was there with his son, and of course our famous runner, the interim superintendent, who was there in all of the 18-degree weather with her running shorts on. Oh my goodness. But it was a great event, and we say thank you to the Education Alliance for that every year. Went to Billinghurst Middle School for a superintendent visit with some of my colleagues. We attended the Lead, Teach, Learn announcement of our preliminary graduation rates. And then Interim Superintendent McNeil and I and Mark Mathers did a presentation to the EDON board about school funding, which was also very well received, and a very significant proposal for commitment from the business community by EDON Executive Director Mike Kazmierski to have the business community step up to actually advocate for increasing their taxes to increase funding to schools, and not just continuing to divide the existing pie in different ways, but actually make the pie larger. So courageous step forward, and a lot of support from the EDON board for that. So yeah, very, very positive. Yeah, so, and I'll turn it over to Dr. McNeil.
Well, first of all, just thank you to all of the trustees for accompanying me on a lot of these journeys throughout, because it's really special to the schools. And an example is yesterday, our schools go out and do just fantastic. I mean, we had the mariachi band at Sparks Middle School and the choir that sang as the trustees, and we walked up with our state superintendent. So it was just fantastic, and I want to send kudos to Kevin Carroll and Stacy Ting and Tierney Cahill for just doing a tremendous job the entire day. That's something above and beyond what their staffs do, just educating kids on a regular basis. And then just to tack on to Dr. Taylor's comment around the Council of Great City Schools, we will be bringing forth a presentation to the Board of Trustees to really dive into the return on investment for the dues that we pay in order to be a council member. I attended a session on sex trafficking of minors, and I sit on the, my first meeting will be next week on the Mayor's Task Force for Sex Trafficking, and so I'll be bringing forth hopefully a draft policy around that as well for our school district and administrative regulations. And then tomorrow we will have Renown has invited the trustees and myself and our chief of police to a press conference regarding traffic safety that will be at Pickett Park tomorrow at 1 p.m. and the trustees have been notified about that via email. And then on October 31st, we will be at Trainer Middle School with a special guest, along with some of our trustees who are also special guests as well, for a safety assembly at Trainer Middle School at 11:30. And then finally, just a reminder that we have a work session Friday starting at 9 a.m. We will have breakfast and lunch to go over metrics on the strategic plan for the August reporting period and the October reporting period.
And that'll be here in this room.
Here in this room.
Okay, thank you. Future agenda item requests. I was concerned by the public comment. I know, General Counsel, you did reach out to that student. I'm not asking that it be put on the agenda, but I'm asking you all to consider how you can update us on what the issues are and the policies around students who must attend with folks who have been adjudicated as attackers. Any other future agenda item requests? Okay, public comment? Oh, Nathan, yes, sorry.
Yes, I'm terribly sorry. I do think that it would warrant, given the events that transpired this morning, if we explored potential solutions in the future to perhaps address the safety of students in transit from home to school, especially ones who have to walk when it's early, when it's dark, and in the winter when it's icy, just so that we can avoid this in the future and make sure that ideally it never happens again. I don't know whether this would take the form of an additional school zone on Plum Lane or whether there would be other safety measures that we could implement, but I would definitely request that we at least look into the issue at some point.
And there is a lot going on in the community. I know no further discussion among board on items that are future agenda item requests, but there is a huge amount that's going on as a community-wide initiative, so it would be good to bring that to the board and have a presentation about all the work that's going on with our partners, with RTC, Reno PD, Sheriff's Office, private sector folks like the Dolans that are doing public service announcements, because we have a lot of people in the community that are really committed to this. So, okay. So, no public comment. Next meeting announcement, you heard we have a work session on November 1st, and then our regular meeting is November 12th. And with that, we are adjourned.